Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, friends, and good morning, Ma'am Anggani. We are coming from the third group. We will discuss about standard test assessment and assessing listening skills. Before we come to the discussion, let me introduce the member of this group. First is me, Rahmania, and the second presenter will be Afifah, and the third presenter or the last presenter will be Hardiana Budiarti. We come to the first topic or the first discussion, which is standard test assessment. So the definition of standard assessment is a method of evaluating students' skills mastery. So as we know that each skills has each standard, and also each skills has each assessment tools. And the objectives of standard test assessment is to help students, families, and teachers understand accurately how students are doing as they work on developing their skills. Or the standard test assessment is to measure or to know the progress of the students in their developing skills of language. Now we come to the ELD standards. English language development comes from dozens of curriculum, assessment specialists, teachers, and also researchers, studied by Fields 2000 and Coleman 2001. And there are 5 domains in ELD standards. First one is categories of language. In these categories of language, consists of pragmatics, discourse, social linguistics, SFL, and so on. And second domain is students' need. The third domain is number and scope of standards. So there will be a realistic number and scope of standards to be included within a given curriculum. Then the fourth is standards. Standards for teachers, of course. So there are qualifications, expertise, and training for teachers. The last one is means available. So means available to assess students' attainment of those standards. ELD assessment comes after ELD standards, and ELD assessment implies the responsibility for correctly assessing their attainment. And you know that not only developing standard but also creating standard test assessment. We come to CASAS and SCANS. CASAS comes from Comprehensive Adult Student Assessment System, and SCANS from Secretary's Commission and Achieving Necessary Skill. CASAS and SCANS occurs in colleges, community colleges, adult schools, and workplace settings. The example of CASAS is a program designed to provide broadly based assessment of ESL curricula across the U.S. CASA's objectives to measure functional reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills and also HOTS. And SCANS consists of outlines competencies necessary for language in the workplace, or we can use SCANS in the workplace area. We come to teacher standards. So there are 3 important things to be attention for teachers. First one is linguistic and language development. Of course, as teachers have to mastery in this area, linguistic and language development to upgrade or to develop or to improve our mastery in language. Second one is culture and the interrelationship between language and cultures. Of course, each country has each culture, and as EFL teacher, we have to mastery or we have to be good in interrelate between language and culture to get closer to the students. We can by mastery culture, we can create or we can show the students the real example of applying the language. Then the last is planning and managing instructions. So of course, as a teachers, we have to have a short or either short and long planning for our students or for our teaching learning process. And managing instruction includes assessment tools. We come to the last of my part, which is the consequences of standard past assessment and standardized testing. So when we apply standard past and standardized testing, we may face these things. First one is test bias. Second one is test-driven learning and teaching. Test bias comes in many forms such as language, culture, race, gender, and learning styles. And test-driven learning and teaching, single measure of performance will determine their lives and no rewards for teachers. Those are the consequences that may be faced by teachers when we apply the standard test and standard test testing. Okay, this is the last of my part and will be continued by Mbak Afifa, and time is yours.
Thank you for Mbak Nia. Okay, I want to continue the presentation. I want to explain about ethical issues in critical language testing. Critical language testing itself refers to questioning the use of tests as tools of power in educational setting, according to Zohami 2001. Sohami believes that tests are tools of power and argues that tests are introduced by those at power centers in order to manipulate systems and impose their agendas on powerless test takers. In this regard, she supports that test takers are true victims of tests as they have to accept the authority of tests without questioning their contents and their relationship with their current level of knowledge. Bourdieu 1991 in the same film criticized the detrimental of consequences of tests, referring to the symbolic power of tests which is enhanced by encouraging test takers' dependency of tests and test result as the sole of criterion of their evaluation from an early age. And the next, critical language testing or CLT, also called critical pedagogy. There are four issues in CLT. The first is psychometric traditions are challenged by interpretive, individualized procedures for predicting success and evaluating ability. And the next, test designers have a responsibility to offer multiple modes of performance to account for varying styles and abilities among test takers. And next, tests are deeply embedded in culture and ideology. And last, test takers are political subjects in a political context. Assessing listening. Many people are confused about the differences between hearing and listening. Hearing is one of the traditional five senses and simply involves the ability to hear sound through the ear. But it doesn't matter we understand the sounds or not. But listening, on the other hand, is all about making sense of what we've heard, and our brains carry out a whole range of activities in order to do this. Firstly, our brain decides whether the sounds reaching areas are the sounds of language. We do this by trying to match the sounds we're hearing with words we already know, then we group them together into phrases, which helps us to clarify in our minds what the topic is that we are hearing about. Finally, we make a connection between what we think we just heard with our pre-existing knowledge of the topic based on our knowledge of the word. And a good listening assessment should try to copy the real life use of the language as closely as possible. And next, observing the performance of the fourth skill. When you are assessing your students, sometimes it is difficult to know exactly what you should assess. This is why I will to try to cast light on the topic based on Brown Book language assessment. First of all, I want to make clear that all language user performs the act of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So, when you assess someone's ability is one or a combination of the four skills, you assess that person's competence, but you observe the person's performance. However, sometimes the performance doesn't indicate true competence due to a set of factors such as a bad night rest, illness, and an emotional distraction, there's anxiety and etc. that can affect performance and therefore produce an unreliable measure of actual competence. For that reasons, we as teachers should not rely on the result of a single performance, since there is certain degree of fallibility in, but we have to triangulate our measurements. That is, to consider at least two or more performance or contexts before drawing a conclusion. Here there are four triangulations. The first is several tests. They are combined to form an assessment. The next is a single test with multiple tests tasks to account for learning styles and performance variable. And the next, in-class and extra-class graded work. And the last, alternative forms of assessment. Multiple measures will always give you a more reliable and valid assessment than a single measure. Also, when assessing learner competence, we as a teacher must rely as much as possible on observable performance in our assessment of the students. In the case of the receptive skills, you can see on the table listening and reading. It can be observed neither the process of performing nor a product, but the result in form of spoken or written output. In other words, you cannot observe the actual act of listening or reading, nor can you see or hear an actual product. You can observe learners only while they are listening or reading. On the other hand, the productive skills, speaking and writing, allow us to hear and see the process as it is performed. Writing gives a permanent product in the form of a written piece, and unless you have recorded the speech, there is no permanent observable product for speaking performance. Therefore, all assessment of reading and listening must be made on the basis of observing the test takers speaking or writing, and not on the listening or reading itself. In other words, all assessment of receptive skills must be made by inference. And the next, the importance of listening. There are three: the importance of listening. The first is listening is a significant language skill to develop in second language learning. Despite it is important, language learners consider listening as the most difficult language skill to learn. Many language learners focus a lot on speaking. They don't spend as much effort on quietly listening. And listening itself is a vital skill for language learning. I consider that the listening is very important. Learners need to develop the listening skills so they can engage in conversation. If the listener doesn't understand what the speaker says, so he won't be able to respond to the speaker. Research shows that when we communicate, we spend around 40 till 50% of our time for listening, and 25 till 30% for speaking, 11 till 16% for reading, and only 90% for writing. Although the last one might have changed in recent years due to the rise of social media such as Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp, Line, and etc. That means we spend about half the time for listening. And the next, basic types of listening. There are 4 basic types of listening. The first is intensive listening, is listening for perception of the components such as phonemes, words, intonations, discourse markers, and etc. And the next, responsive listening, is listening to relatively short stage of language such as a greeting, comment, question, comprehension check, and etc. to give a short response. And the next, selective listening, is processing stretches of discourse such as short monologues for several minutes in order to scan for certain information. And the purpose is to be able to comprehend design information in the context of larger stretches of spoken language. TV, radio, news items, stories, and events. It is the part of selective listening. And the last, extensive listening. It ranges from listening to lengthy lectures to listening to a conversation and deriving a comprehensive message or purpose. Listening for the gist, the main idea, references are the part of extensive listening. And the next, micro and macro skills of listening. According to Richard, 1983, there are 11 micro skills. The first is discriminate among the distinctive sounds of English. The next is retain chunks of language of different lengths in short-term memory. Recognize English stress pattern, words in stressed and unstressed positions, rhythmic structure, intonation contours, and their role in signaling information. And the next, recognize reduced forms of words and distinguish word boundaries, recognize a core of words, and interpret word order, pattern, and their significance. And the next, process speech at different rates of delivery. And the seventh, process speech containing pauses, errors, corrections, and other performance variables. And next, recognize grammatical word classes, systems, patterns, rules, and elliptical forms. And detect sentence constituents and distinguish between major and minor constituent. And next, recognize that a particular meaning may be expressed in different grammatical forms. And last, recognize cohesive devices in spoken discourse. And the macro skills, there are 6. For the first, recognize the communicative functions of utterances according to situations, participants, and goals. And the next, in first situations, participants' goals using real-world knowledge. From events, ideas, and so on, describe, predict outcomes, infer links and connections between events, deduce cause and effect, and detect such relation as main idea, supporting idea, new information, given information, generalization, and exemplification. And for the fourth, distinguish between literal and implied meaning. And next, use facial, kinetic, body language, and other nonverbal clues to decipher meanings. And last, develop and use a battery of listening strategies such as detecting keywords, guessing the meaning of words from context, appealing for help, and signaling comprehension or lack thereof. And here the last of my presentations, what makes listening difficult according to Richard, 1983. For the first is clustering, attending to appropriate chunks of language, phrases, clauses, and constituent. Next is redundancy, recognizing the kinds of repetitions, refreshing, elaborations, and insertions that unrehearsed spoken language often contains, and benefiting from that recognition. And the third, reduced forms, understanding the reduced forms that may not have been a part of an English learner's past learning experiences in classes where only formal textbook language has been presented. And the next, performance variables, being able to weed out hesitations, false starts, pauses, and corrections in natural speech. And next, colloquial language, comprehending idioms, slang, reduced forms, shared cultural knowledge. And rate of delivery, keeping up with the speed of delivery, processing automatically as the speaker continues. And the next is stress, rhythm, and intonation, correctly understanding prosodic elements spoken language, which is almost always much more difficult than understanding the smaller phonological bits and pieces. And last, interaction, managing the interactive flow of language from listening to speaking to listening and extract. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mbak Afifa. Okay, in this part, we'll be talk about designing assessment tasks. In this designing assessment task will be divided into four. Alright, first is designing assessment tasks in intensive listening. In this part is to design the task including making decision about how you will elicit performance and how you will expect the task taker to respond. And these designs will be focused on two levels. The first one is recognizing phonological and morphological elements, and the second one is paragraphs of recognition. For the level of recognizing phonological and morphological elements is the assessment of recognizing of phonological and morphological elements of language. The content of this assessment is task give a spoken stimulus and ask task takers to identify the stimulus from two or more choices. Okay, let's take a look in the slide. There is an example from recognizing phonological and morphological element. For the first table or the chart is phonemic pair consonants and phonemic pair vowels. So let's take a look at the slide. In the slide mentioned, test taker here is from California, and then test taker reads there are two choices. The first choice is he is from California, and the second, she's from California. So from this example, it's focused on the phonemic pair consonants. So the test taker must to choose what the answer is appropriate from the what the test taker hear at the first. Well, let's move in the example for phonemic pair. Focus on the vowels. Well, the test taker here is he living, and then the test taker read about the choices. The first is he living, and the second is he living. Well, so in this phonemic pair vowels, the test taker should be focused what test taker hear before prefer or should be test taker choice in the what the test taker read. Okay, in the second table is full morphological example with ed ending. So in this morphological pair, the test task give to the test taker little bit challenges. Talk about the format sentence with the ed ending. Well, let's take a look. What the test taker here is I missed you very much, and then the test taker read about two choices. The first, I miss you very much, and then the second, I miss you very much. So the test taker in this example of morphological pair with a ed ending, should be focused what the test taker hear before. Okay, in this slide is another example for recognizing phonological and morphological elements. So in this slide, there are two tables. The first one is with stress pattern in can't, or we can say cannot. Okay, in this table, the task give the test taker a little bit challenges about the using a word with the stress pattern. It focus on the can or cannot. Okay, let's take a look with the example. Test taker here, my boyfriend can't go to the cinema. And then the test taker read two choices. The first, my boyfriend can go to the cinema. And then second, my boyfriend can go to the cinema. Alright, from the stress pattern, it's also make a task taker a little bit stressed or a little bit confused about what the task taker should be choose in the choices. And in the second table is one word stimulus. It means despite use stress and unstressed pattern, task taker got the one word stimulus, so it's make it simple one. Okay, let's take a look in the example. What the test taker here is wine, and then the test taker read two choices. First one is wine, and then the second one is wine. So the test taker should be choose what the word related to the test taker here. So from all of the example, the test taker must identify what the choices or the answer appropriate with the test taker here before. Alright, we move in the second level is paraphrase recognition. In this level, there are two stimulus. The first one is sentence paraphrase and the second one is dialogue paraphrase. Well, take a look with the sentence paraphrase example. Okay. What the test taker here is the sentence. The sentence say, "Hello, my name's Keiko. I come from Japan." And then the test taker read in the book or in the paper with 4 choices. First, Keiko is comfortable in Japan. Second, Keiko wants to come Japan. Third, Keiko is Japanese. Fourth, Keiko likes Japan. Well, in this example, the test taker should be paraphrase what the sentence means. What I said before, the sentence said, "Hello, my name's Keiko. I come from Japan." So the test taker should be analyzing or paraphrase what the sentence means. Alright, we move in the dialogue paraphrase. With the name dialect paraphrase should be dialect, right? Well, let's take a look in the test taker here. There are dialogue between men and women. Man said, "Hi Maria, my name's George." And the woman, "Nice to meet you, George. Are you American?" And the man said, "No, I'm Canadian." Okay, let's take a look in the test taker read with the 4 choices. The first, George lives in the US. Second, George is American. Third, George comes from Canada. Fourth, Maria is Canadian. Next, we move in second designing assessment task and responsive listening. It is related to a question and answer format. The test taker's response is the appropriate answer to a question. The objective of this item, it means the example in the table, is recognition of the WH question, how much, and its appropriate response. Alright, let's take a look with the appropriate response to a question. The example with the test taker here, how much time did you take to do your homework? And then the test taker read, there are 4 choices. First, in about an hour. Second, about an hour. Third, about $10. Fourth, yes, I did. So, with the name of appropriate response to a question, which is the test taker should answer the question appropriately with the question. The question said, how much time did you take to do your homework? So the test taker should be answered about the time that test taker take to do the homework. The third designing assessment task is selective listening. In this type, the test taker will listen to a limited quantity of aural input and must discern within some specific information. Well, this type will be divided into 3 types. Okay, let's take a look with the first. Is listening close, or we can call it close dictation or partial dictation. In this listening close, tasks require the test taker to listen to a story, monologue, or conversation and simultaneously read the written text in which selected words or phrases have been deleted. And then test taker see a transcript of the passage that they are listening to and filling the blanks with the words or phrases that they hear. Well, let's take a look with the example that the taker should be see or hear the transcript or listen the story or monologue, something like that, and then the test taker should be write the missing words or phrases and the blanks. Second is information transfer. The technique in which orally processed information must be transferred to a visual representation, such as labeling a diagram, identifying an element in a picture, completing a form, or showing route on a map. And this information transfer, there are 3 types. First is information transfer multiple picture cue selection. With multiple picture cue, help test takers to focus on just relevant picture pass on information that they hear. Okay, let's take a look with the example in the slide. There are 4 different pictures. Okay. From the different picture, the test taker should be choose one picture appropriate with the test taker here. Okay, this is the test taker here. Choose the correct picture. In my backyard, I have a bird feeder. Yesterday, there were 2 birds and a squirrel fighting for the last few seats in the bird feeder. The squirrel was on top of the bird feeder, while the larger bird sat at the bottom of the feeder, screeching at the squirrel. The smaller bird was flying around the squirrel, trying to scare it away. So, from the test taker here, the test taker should be analyze what picture related from the information that test taker here. From this example, the objective of this task is to test prepositions and prepositional phrases because there are sentences or words about preposition and prepositional phrases such as at the bottom, on top of, or another. Okay, second types of information transfer with single picture cue, verbal multiple choice. Okay, from this information transfer with the single picture cue and then verbal multiple choices, the test taker see the single picture in the task. Okay, the test taker see the picture is about a photograph of a woman in a laboratory setting with no glasses on, squinting through a microscope with her right eye and with her eye closed. So the test taker see the single picture about a photo about a woman in a laboratory setting and blah blah blah. And then the test taker Here some choices or multiple choice. The first says speaking into a microphone. Second says putting on her glasses. Third, she has both eyes open. Fourth, says using a microscope. So from the test taker see the one picture, and then the test taker hears some multiple choice, and then what next test taker should be choose what correct answer. Okay, we move in the third types of information transfer is chart filling. And this chart filling, it's become more complex because first test taker will be listen to a very long description, and while they listen they can look at a map of the layout. The example one, there are a chart or table, and then they will fill the correct answer in the chart. Okay, the last is sentence repetition. It is the types of designing assessment tasks in selective listening. In sentence repetition, the test taker must retain a stretch of language long enough to produce it, and then must respond with the oral repetition of the stimulus. The mistake in repetition is scored as a mistake in listening. Sentence repetition is far from flawless listening assessment task. This task may test only recognition of sounds, and it can be contaminated easily by lack of short-term memory ability. Hence, the teacher may never be able to distinguish a listening comprehension from an oral prediction error. Well, everyone, this is the last design assessment task. It's talk about extensive listening. This design, there are three types. The first one, dictation. Second, communicative stimulus response task. Third, authentic listening task. In the dictation, the test taker hear a passage 50 to 100 words that recited 3 times. First, reading a normal speed, no pauses, and the test taker listen to the guess. Second, reading in with long pauses between phrases or natural word groups, during which time test takers write what they have just heard. Third, reading is at normal speed, so the test takers can check their work and proofread. Okay, in this slide is example about dictation. What I said before, the test taker will hear a passage of 50 to 100 words that recited 3 times. Okay, the next type of designing assessment task in about extensive listening is communicative stimulus response task. It is a popular genre of assessment task in which the test taker is presented with a stimulus monologue or conversation and then is asked to respond a set of comprehension questions. There are 2 points in communicative stimulus response task. First, dialogue and multiple choice comprehension item. Second, dialogue and authentic question on details. Okay, let's take a look at the example about dialogue and multiple choice comprehension item. In dialogue and multiple choice comprehension items, there are the monologues, lectures, and brief conversations used in such tasks are sometimes a little unnatural, but we can create reasonable, authentic stimuli with some care and creativity. So, in this example, the test taker will be here the conversation between Doctor and Lind, and then the test taker read in the task some a question related with the what the test taker hear. Because it is dialogue and multiple choice comprehension item, so the questions are presented to the task initial understanding, which is the test taker can easily identify with or what the test taker hear. Next is second type of communicative stimulus response task is dialogue and authentic question on detail because it's more detailed, so the question should be complicated or not more complicated but a little bit complicated because test taker must pay more attention. Okay everyone, we move and the last type of designing assessment tasks about extensive listening. The third or the last part is authentic listening task. This is ideally the language assessment field would have a stockpile of listening test types that are cognitively demanding, communicative, and authentic. Well, and this authentic listening task will be divided into four. The first one is note taking, second, editing, third, interpretive task, and last, retelling. Now let's take a look in the first one. Okay, it is note taking. In the academic world classroom, lectures by professor are common feature of a non-native English user experience. One among several formats include note-taking by the test takers. This test is evaluated by the teacher on a 3-point system. First, 0 to 15 points for visual representation, 0 to 10 points for accuracy, and 0 to 5 points for symbol and abbreviation. The process of scoring is time-consuming and it lacks some reliability. Second is editing. Editing provides written and spoken stimulus, and it requires the test taker to listen for discrepancies or differences. Scoring achieves relatively high reliability as there are usually a small number of specific identified differences. Okay, next is interpretive task. It is the stimulus material to a longer stretch of discourse and force the test taker to infer a response. The test taker are then directed to interpret the stimulus by answering a few questions in open-ended form. And last is retelling. In a retelling task, the test taker listens to a story or news event and then simply retell or summarize it, either orally or in writing. The test takers must identify the keys, main idea, purpose, supporting points, and conclusion to show full comprehension. Right everyone, this is the last part of our presentation and we want to say thank you for your attention, and if you have question, suggestion or anything, let us know. Thank you.